Hey, I'm Leila. Thank you for joining me today. In today's tutorial, I will show you how to draw this black fur and give you all the tips and tricks in depth. This video will also be very relaxing, very calming, like most of the videos on this channel. If you followed along with some of them, you'd know by now. And I hope, guys, that this will also be one of those videos that will help you to relax, unwind, and give you this outlet for your creative energy, sort of create a safe space where you can stop thinking about any of your problems, stresses, or anything like this, and just focus on a piece of paper, your pencil. Let's go. Okay, so for this tutorial you would need a piece of paper, a brush for smudging, a kneaded eraser, some smudge sticks, and soft pastel pencils. You can also use charcoal pencils as well. As always, we start with the observation. You need to make sure that you study your object. If you have a black fur in front of you, I had to borrow this from someone so I could show you. If you don't, then make sure you have a very good image. It's really important to study it, to study its reflections and its shadows. Because black fur is so dark, a lot of people make a lot of mistakes when they're drawing it. So today I will help you to not make those mistakes. So now I'm going to start drawing. Number one, start drawing in the direction of the fur growth. It will fasten your process for you. By the way, best would be to start with a medium to hard pastel pencil or charcoal if you're using charcoal, just so that it's not too smudgy. And you see how I'm not going fully in depth and just blocking all the color in. Because at this stage I'm just marking the main form and shape. For now, I'm going to place this medium to hard charcoal or pastel if you're using pastel down, and I'm going to go for the softer one. You can see how much more black it can deposit instantly. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the darkest shadows and some really black areas. I'm still not going full strength. I'm just creating the darker patches where I see them. But what I'm still doing, I'm still carrying on with that direction of the fur growth. Next, I'm going to grab a smudge stick. Now this is a separate smudge stick for charcoals and pastels, so if you're using graphite, make sure you use something separate. And I'm going to start smudging. I'm going to be smudging in the direction of the fur growth. So everything we're doing it in the direction of the fur, the way it's growing, the way it's sort of lying down. And at this stage you can be starting to notice some of the areas that are you know, where you've got sort of bunches of fur that are sitting closer to each other or a little bit at a distance from each other, so you can already bring those together as well by simply just using your smudge stick a little bit more vigorously in some areas and going over more times. Some areas that are really dark, you can just block them in like that, because we'll be applying darker layers on top. Now, before we go into more black, I want to bring your attention to a very, very important tip. This tip is very commonly ignored, and that's the fact that black fur isn't always 100% black and white. It has other shades of color. These shades can be brown, can be blue, can even be green, sometimes purple. So what you need to do is you need to just stare at your either image, if you're working from the image, or at your actual fur, or if it's an animal that you are drawing. Make sure that you just stare at just that blackness and try to pick out what other color is there. Is there a little bit of yellow present in the highlights, and so on. So at this stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of brown in the areas where I see that. I'm adding it earlier on, so then later I can mix it in with the black as I go along. I'm also going to add a bit of blue in some areas where I see that as well. So I see some blue going through there, maybe just through there. At the moment it might look too patchy and almost look like a funny looking colored fur, but you will see what would happen later as we carry on working on this. Brown through there and through there. And again, I'm just going to give it a little bit of smudge to work it into the paper. Now I'm going to go back in with the black and work over those colors that I've just applied. And even though it seems like, well, you're covering it over anyway, you know, why would you bother with other colors? But the trick is not to have those showing as other colors. You know, I don't want there to be blue fur and red fur and brown fur or whatever. These are just shades that you see within the black color itself. So at the end it will still all look black, but it'll have more depth to it, which will make it a little bit more 3D and much more interesting as well. If you are enjoying this video, I would like to invite you to check out my Patreon page. I have lots of extra videos over there that are not available on YouTube. Some of these videos are very in-depth and also very relaxing. Just for $2 a month you can start supporting this channel, and starting from $8 a month you can get access to all extra videos that are created on Patreon. Many in-depth tutorials, longer format videos, all sorts of things, including draws to win my sketches, one-on-one consultations, video requests, and I should probably just stop talking about it now. You can just go and check it out for yourself. Okay, so now I've sharpened my pencil and we're going to carry on. So let's assess. So you see already at this point, it doesn't look like brown and blue patchy fur. It still looks like black fur, but we do have that extra depth of color. And as we keep working on it, the more and more it's going to come together. So now I'm going to go over it again and really deepen the color. But before I do, I'm going to use my smudge stick and again just work that charcoal a little bit into the paper. At this stage I'm focusing on the internal part, you know, the black part. Okay, so I'd say we're pretty much done our base layers now, and now you can already see what we're going to achieve at the end. But we need to keep working to get it to the finish, you know, to get it across the finish line, so to speak. So for that, I'm going to go over this again, some of the darker areas. And now I'm going to be paying a little bit extra attention to the outside fur, you know, that sort of outside edge, I mean. Now I'm going to use this brush. Now this is a very old, very sort of a reasonably rough brush, but if you use a very smooth brush with your charcoal or pastel, it can get a little bit too soft, and you will not be able to give the direction that you want, just like in painting. So I'm going to use this brush for this sort of a technique. And so we want to soften some of the edges with a brush. If you want to create a softer look, make sure you go in one direction, like that. And if you want a firmer, harsher look, you can go back and forth like this. But for this one, I want to create a little bit of softness. Because it's quite a soft medium, and you saw how much kickoff we were getting, so you can get this sort of a haziness. If you don't like it, you can always use your putty rubber to just collect it all and remove it. You see how much I'm actually collecting? It'll probably be even more visible if you are working on white paper. This is gray paper, so it's not as visible, but with white paper it will definitely be visible. But really, I don't think you should worry too much, at least not till the end of the drawing process. But if this is something that bothers you, if you want to have a very clean work, then this is what you can do. With the putty rubber at this stage, you can also sort of work in the more of the negative way and remove some of the pastel or charcoal, if you're using charcoal for that matter. So you can work in both ways here. So for example, if you think you've done it too flat, you can always fluff it up a little bit by using this little technique. So that's another very useful tip for you guys. Okay, so now I'm just going to carry on with all the stuff I was working with before and add darker shades in some areas. So you see how I'm building it up darker and darker and darker. Okay, and here again, if you want to, you can go and soften things up with a brush a little bit, or you can use smudge sticks. Okay, so now I'm going back to the harder charcoal pencil, pastel pencil, and I'm just getting little furry bits here and there, because you can see how it's got tiny little hairs, and you might like to mimic that on the sides. If you are working on a shorter fur, this is where you need to pay attention to what your fur looks like, so that then you can do a very similar thing. Or we can clean the brush. Just so that we're not depositing more than what we want, and then softly brush over only some areas. See, now I'm not doing it over all the little hairs. I'm only going over some of the specific strands, maybe the ones I want to darken a little bit or soften a little bit. See, like on here and here and here. Okay, now I'm going to go back in with more black and again darken some of the areas that I want to be really, really black. In some areas where you want it to be really black, you can even go now in the direction against the fur. That's just to build up the color. So see, for example, like here, but only do it in the areas where you want it to be just block black. Okay, so now we have built up quite enough, I think, at this stage of layers. So what we can do now, if you still can see some of the different shades that are present in the, like the blue, the brown, the red and things like that, you can always add those in. Again, if you see them really vividly in some furs, that would depend more on the lights that it reflects back at you and so on. You'd probably be able to see more, and some a little bit less. Also, fur can be a little bit different. For example, if you are working on the natural animal, you can have black animals that sort of go slightly brown or their fur discolors because of the sunlight. So then of course you'd be adding other colors in as well. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to start looking at the highlights. What I want you to pay attention to is that you can get different shades of highlight. You can get a bit of a blue highlight, you can get a little bit of a creamy highlight, pink, gray, and then of course white. So sometimes you, because of, for example, the undercolor of the black fur, you might find that one is much more prominent, and sometimes because of the colors that are reflecting around it, you might find a variation of these. So what I'm going to start is I'm going to just mark lightly with gray, just a little bit of the direction here and there, and gray helps me to not overpower, but to somewhat help me get more of the direction, kind of like when we first started shading, we've applied the directional marks. So it's a very similar thing here as well. Just a few directional markings. You don't want to put too much of it because you don't want to take it back to gray. All that black we've been building up, you don't want to, sort of interfere with that. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for this color it's sort of like a cream color. I don't know if it's got its color, it's 103, but I'd call it a cream color, so it's not exactly white, just a little bit yellowy. And I'm going to, just in some areas, brush some of this over, like areas like this, areas like that I see quite bright. Make sure you don't overuse it, because if you do, the fur will start looking gray rather than black with some lighter accents. Again, if you have short fur, your strokes will be a little bit shorter. If you've got fur that is really shiny, then perhaps you're gonna need to go for even stronger white. But if you've got quite a dull fur, then maybe just even using gray on its own would be sufficient enough. So always make sure you've got the right technique for the right texture of your fur. So next I'm going to go for this blue. I know it sounds really weird that I'm going to be using this light blue in there, but I can definitely see that color in those little fur highlights. Using these colors rather than going straight for white also sort of how would I say it, stops the fur from looking gray, isn't gray here, when people age, that sort of a thing. So I would say try to study, and pay attention before you go in for the bright whites and things like that. If you do make a mistake of going over it too much, remember, you can always go back to the black and you can add some more black. And it's not even necessarily a mistake. You might want to add some more black as you feel that it just lacks that depth once you applied highlights. So always keep checking. See, like that patch there that I've done when I was showing you, I think that's just a little bit too light, so I'm going to go over it with just a bit of black. And now, depending on the texture of your fur, and my fur is quite sort of all over the place like that, You can add these free-flowing lines. Now I'm finally gonna go in for the white. Now with this I'm actually going to do very, very thin, and you see I've got a very tiny little point on there. Little marks. Only in the areas where I can see them the strongest. Because remember, I'm using gray paper, so this color is even lighter than the gray paper. And that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to clean off my white as well, because it picks up quite a bit of black. And just before I say it's finished, I'm just gonna apply some really strong highlights just in some areas like this, and then some just through there. Yeah, I think now it's done. And I'm just gonna leave it right there. Let me know if there's anything else that you would like to see from me, and I will be doing a tutorial on drawing a furry black animal, so that then you will be able to use all of the things that I taught you here in the next tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this video opened more possibilities on how to draw fur. Don't forget to subscribe, because very soon I will be making a video on how to draw an animal with black fur, just to show you more and more in depth on how to adopt these techniques when you're actually drawing a whole animal. Also, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. I would also like to say a big thank you to my wonderful patrons who are supporting this channel so that you guys can see these videos. You can go and check it out too, might find something very interesting for yourself there as well. And very soon I will be making a Q&A video, so if you are interested you can leave a question under the video. I hope you guys have a lovely day, and as always, thank you so much for drawing with me.